Well, hello and welcome again to our reading of the Greek New Testament, and I'm just reading through Galatians and beginning with chapter 4 here. Paul continues then his words to the Galatians. Lego de ephoson chronon ho kleronomos nepios estin uden diaphere doulou kurios panton αλλά hypo epitropous esti kai oikonomus acrites pro thesmias to patros. So he makes another metaphor here to do with inheritance. So he says, but I say, ephoson chronon, for as much time, so during that time and when the kleronimos, well, here it's the inheritor or the heir, is nepios, is a child. Diaphere is impersonal. He differs, so there's a participle here. Although being master of everything, he differs in no respect from a slave. Now, just to go back over some of the words here, which in the grammar here, the kleronomos, it's from kleros, which is a lot, originally sort of block of land that a son might inherit from his father. The nom here is connected with the verb nemo, to distribute. You shouldn't think of it as connected with law so much, but to the verb meaning to distribute. So one who receives by distribution his lot is an inheritor or an heir. And the word simply becomes more abstract, of course. So it corresponds to our word heir, that someone is going to inherit something. Nepios is from ne plus the epos root. Ne is an old negative, and the epos is a word. So someone who doesn't speak a word or can't speak coherently, well, that of course is in Greek is thought of as a child. So a nepios is a very young child. So I say, for as long a time as the heir is a child, diaphere is impersonal, and this is a standard expression in Greek. He differs in respect of nothing, and it takes genitive. He differs from a slave in no way, and we have a concessive participle here, although being master of all. So although he is technically master of all, he differs in no way from a slave, but he is hyper epitropos, he is under the control of, these are guardians. This word, it's a later word. It's not in earlier Greek, but it's only here in the New Testament. But it is a word that turns up in many other writers. So he is under guardians and oikonomus. Now, an oikonomos is one who manages, against this nemo root here, who manages the house. And it's a very vague word. It's simply any sort of manager. So custodian perhaps here. But he is under the control of guardians and custodians, acrites, until the prothesmia. This is prothesmios is an adjective, I think, meaning appointed, and you've got to supply hemera here, or hemeras here, until the appointed day of his father. This is pro plus the thes is from tithemi. So that which is laid down, hence appointed. So until the appointed day of his father. Houtos kai hemas, hote emen nepioi, hupatas stoikea tu cosmu emetha dedulomenoi. Thus also are you. Us, I should say. So we are exactly the same. Thus also are us. When amen, this is the first person plural from imperfect from Amy, when we were napioi, when we were children, we get this periphrastic pluperfect here. So you've got the past tense of the verb to be, first person. And interesting here, we get amen and ametha. These are two alternative forms. It's funny that he uses both in the same sentence, but there's no real distinction between amen and ametha. Perhaps he's just being stylistic here, but both of these forms occur in Biblical Greek. So we were, and we get a perfect passive participle here, we were enslaved, hupo, under the stoicheia of the world. Now, much has been written about stoicheia. The meaning is much disputed. It's connected with the verb steiko, and a stoicheion is literally a row or a series, any kind of row or series of things. So, for example, the alphabet is sometimes called in Greek ta stoicheia because it consists of a row or series of letters. This word had come to take on many different meanings, particularly in later Greek philosophy and Neoplatonic philosophy. Many thought that they used these words to describe the heavenly bodies, who were believed in some way to control a person's destiny, a little bit sort of like modern astrology and so on. This is often also thought of perhaps in a more personal sense, that these are some kind of elemental spirits that control the world. That was a very common idea in antiquity. I leave it to the commentaries to argue and to discuss exactly what it might mean here. It's not clear at all from the word itself. It is used in such a wide range. So I'm just going to translate it as elemental spirits, which is one of the common translations of this, but it is a much disputed verse. So just to do it again, so thus also with us, when we were children, we were enslaved under the elemental spirits of the world. Hoti de eilthen to pleroma to chronu, ex apestelen hotheos ton huion autu, genomenon ek gunaikos genomenon hupanomon. Hina tous hupanomon ex agorase, hina ten huiothesian apolabomen. But when now we get another word here. This is connected with pleroo, to fill. So pleroma is the fullness of time, came. And again, this is another word with a huge range of philosophical overtones here. Again, I'll leave it to the commentators to go through it. But when, I'll just take it literally, when the fullness of time came, God sent out from ex apostello, his son, genomenon, having been made, also being, ek gunaikos, we would say perhaps being born of a woman, but this is from just ginomai, and born under the law, hupanomon, hina, in order that he might ransom, redeem, perhaps buy back. It's from ex agorazdo. Agorazdo is to buy, ex agorazdo, to buy back those who were under the law. Hina, in order that we might apolabomen, we might receive, literally take back, huiothesian, sonship. This is a word that does occur numerous times in the New Testament. It's connected with, it's huios, son. The thes is connected with, the is connected with tithemi. It's the root of tithemi. So literally the placing as a son. Sometimes rendered adoption. But sonship is often the usual rendering. So in order that we might receive sonship. Hoti de esti huioi ex apestelen hotheos to pneuma tu huiu autu es takadias hemon, Krasdon aba hopate. Hosti uketa eidulos alahuios eiduhuios kai kleronomos dia theou. Because you are sons, God has sent out the spirit of his Son, very interesting, into your hearts. And krasdon here is a participle, a neuter participle present agreeing with pneuma, which is neuter. Krasdo is to cry out, so a spirit crying out, Abba, Father. So that you are no longer a slave, but a son. And if a son, also a kleronomos, an inheritor or an heir, going back to the earlier part of his metaphor, through God. Dia theou, and there's some variant readings here. Alatoti men ou dotes theon edulusati tois fuse me usin theois. Non degnontes theon malon degnosthentes hupa theou, pos epistrephae palin epita astane kaiptoka stoikea hois palinanothen deluain thelete. So this is a question for this bit, but at that time, not having known, this is a participle from oida, not knowing God, edulasati, so this is it's from duluo, it's a middle here, you served as slaves, and takes dative, the gods, the ones not being, understand gods by nature. A fairly obscure little phrase there. Again, I'll leave it to the commentators to expound. So you're enslaved to those who are not by nature gods, or to the gods who are not really gods by nature. Perhaps he's saying here you're enslaved to gods or to powers that were not in fact really gods at all. Nun degnontes, but now, having known God, malon de, but rather having been made known by God, so rather than you having discovered God, God has made himself known to you, is the sense of it, but it's put into the passive, but rather being made known by God. And now the question is, how, epistrephae, are you turning again, from epistrepho, are you turning again back to the weak and poor stoikeia. These are these elemental spirits we mentioned before. This is a third declension noun. This will be the neuter here. It's asthene, an alpha on the end, and that contracts to give you an eta. So it's asthenes, third declension adjective. This is the neuter. The plural form of this, after the ta and the patoka, these are adjectives modifying stoikeia. To whom, again, back, anew or again. So do you wish to serve them as slaves back again? The anothen is an interesting word. It's literally from ano, from above, but it can have that temporal sense of again or anew. Of course, much is written on this, the famous expression in the Gospels, you must be born, well, anothen. Does it mean again or anew, or does it mean from above? And much has been written on that as well. I think here it's certainly the temporal sense of again. So do you wish to serve them back again as slaves? Hemeras parateres the kai menas kai kairos kai eniautus, Pavumai humas mepos eke ke kopiaka es humas. Paraterio is a common enough verb in the New Testament. It means to keep a close eye on. It's used in the Gospels of the Pharisees keeping a close eye on Jesus to see what he's up to. So paraterio, you watch carefully the days and the menas, literally the moons, but hence months, and the times and or seasons, perhaps for kairos and eniatus, and the years. I fear for you lest perhaps, this is this indefinite pose, see it's enclitic, it puts the accent back here. The main verb here is kekopiaka. Now the verb is kopiao, it's an alpha contract verb. This is the perfect form of this. Notice the alpha doesn't lengthen for this verb, so it's kopiao, it means to labour. Kopos is a labour. So lest I have laboured in you, or among you perhaps, ak in vain. So I fear for you, lest perchance I have laboured among you in vain. Gines de hos ego, hoti cargo hos humes adelphoi, de omai humon. Udin me a dicasete. Become as I am. The cargo is kai ego, because I, understand, have become as you are, brethren, and I ask this of you. I request this of you. Adikio is the verb here. You have done me wrong in no respect. So you have done me no harm or no wrong. Now we get this very interesting little section here about Paul's own personal problems. Oiditi de hoti de asthenea te sarkos eu angelisamen humin to proteron, so proteron, kai ton peresmon humon ente sarken mu, uk ex euthenacity udi ex eptusity, alla hos angelon theou edexes the me, hos Christon Jesum. So, but you know that I proclaimed, there's the main verb here from eu angelisdemai, I proclaimed to you, to proteron is adverbial, the top goes with the proteron previously. Now we get this funny expression here, through a weakness of the flesh. In other words, through some sort of physical infirmity. We're never told what this is. A little bit later he mentions his eyes, so he may have had some sort of eye problem. But anyway, he just says, I proclaimed the gospel to you previously through a physical infirmity, so it's almost despite having a weakness of the flesh. And now the next little bit's difficult. It's just to do it literally. And the perasmos, now we generally learn that as temptation, but it's not. It really means testing or trial. So the trial haemon of you in my flesh. So I think the sense of it is that I put you to the test by my infirmity. So the trial I understand I placed upon you for humon by, using that instrumental use of n, by my flesh, that is my illness, my fleshly infirmity, uk ex euthenacity. Now literally, you did not despise nor did you disdain. Now just to look at these verbs, this is ex euthenio is the verb. The euthen is another form of uden, meaning nothing, and it gets turned into a verb and then strengthened by the ex. So ex euthenio is to regard as nothing, hence to disdain, to think nothing of, and hence to despise, perhaps. This one here is ek plus ptuo. Ptuo is to spit, so this is literally to spit out. And this idea goes back into much earlier Greek. If someone said something unpleasant, you would say ek ptuo, I spit it out. It was a kind of apotropaic word of I will spit it away so that it doesn't have any deleterious effects, and hence comes to mean disdain in later Greek. So you did not despise nor did you disdain the test or the trials I put upon you by my flesh. So that is by the weakness of my flesh. It's a difficult expression. The commentators will undoubtedly have more to say on it. But edexas theme, you received me, hos angelon, like an angel of God, and like, there's no connective here, so there's a bit of asyndeton here, like the Messiah Jesus, so like Jesus Christ himself, we'd say. Pu un ho makarismos humon. Where then is your blessing? Marturo ga humin hoti eidunaton tu sophtalmus humon ex oroxantes edokatimoi. This is a very strong sentence. For I bear witness to you that eidunaton, we've got to supply esti, if it were possible. The participle here is ex oroxantes. This is from ex oruso with a double sigma. Oruso is the verb to dig. Ex oruso, to dig out. So we would say gouge out. So I bear witness to you that if it were possible, having gouged out your eyes, your own eyes, and we have to supply an an here, you would have given them to me. Paul should have put really, well, the Greek should have an an in here because it is indefinite to correspond to our English word would. You would have given it to me. Paul's Greek is not always perhaps as good as it could be, so we just have to supply an an here. Hosti ekthros humon gegona alethuon hemin. Another question. So that have I become, this is first person singular perfect from ginomai, have I become an enemy of you? Ekthros can either be used as a noun, enemy, or as an adjective, hostile, here probably a noun. So that have I become an enemy of you, alethuon, speaking the truth, whom into you? Selusi humas ukalos al ekklesai humas thelusi, hina autus seluti. Now this verb tseloo, again this is very tricky here. Paul's Greek is not easy. If you're finding it hard to follow, it's not particularly easy. Tseloo, the word means to envy. That's and you get the noun tselos, envy, and so on. It has a range of meanings. It can then to become jealous. It can then come to mean to be zealous in the pursuit of goodwill. It can mean to count goodwill, or sorry, to court, I should say, goodwill or favour. We have an expression to curry favour in English, and that might be a nice expression to use here. So they curry favour with you, kalos, not to good purpose, so not well. So in a way which is not well. They curry favour with you, which in a way which is not well. We're not told who this they are at this stage, but thelusin, they wish ekklesai, from ekkleo, to shut out. They wish to exclude you, to shut you out. Hina, in order that, selute, you might curry favour with them, or perhaps you might court their goodwill. Difficult little section there. Kalon de tselusthai en kalo pantoti kai me monon en to parenai met proshumas. It is good, selesthai. This is probably middle here, but could be passive. So it is good to have someone curry favour in callow in a good way. It is always thus. So it is always good, say leusthai, perhaps to be zealous for the goodwill of in a good situation. So it is always good to curry favour in good circumstance. And not only, now we get ento plus the infinitive and the subject goes into the accusative. So not only when I am present with you. So it's probably saying here it is always good for you to to be in pursuit of goodwill in a good situation, and not only when I'm present with you. Teknamu, my children, hus palin odino mekris hu morphothe Christos en humin. So my children, you whom, odino is funny verb here. It's used of giving birth. It's the birth pangs, to be in labour with. Paul often uses this metaphor of being of giving birth when he forms a new congregation, looking after them and encouraging them. He often describes in terms of giving birth to. So my children whom, again, I am in labour with, until, so it's mekri hu, you've got to supply chronu, until the time when Christ is formed among you. Ethelon de perenai pros humas arti kai alexai ten phonen mu hoti aporumai en humin. Now this is the imperfect from thelo. Originally thelo was ethelo in earlier Greek. The epsilon is dropped out in Koine Greek, but it reappears as an augment in the past tense. That's why we get an eta here. So I wanted to be present with you now, and alaxai is an aorist infinitive from alasso, to change, literally change my voice. We might say change my tone of voice, change my tone, alter my tone, because aporumai, I am at a loss, an instrumental dative, instrumental n here, with you. So I was willing to be present now with you and to change my tone of voice because I am at a loss with you. And that's the first part of chapter 4.